This topic this morning is going to be Karlissa, mind your mother's business. That's the topic of the morning. I'm gonna tell y'all what happened, and then I'm gonna mind my business, okay? The lady from the T-Pages called me on the phone. Almost made some more of my hair fall out, talking about you need to get the baby, you need to call Blue and tell him to get the baby. I said, what happened? She said some girls tried to jump Chrisean in Compton and the baby is with her. Can you please tell somebody, can you please get the baby? I call my son and tell him he need to get the baby. He says, I'm not getting involved in none of that. I'm not dealing with none of that. I said, it's a 911. You need to get the baby. The people done called me.
Stop scrolling. Don't blink. Because this wasn't just drama. This was chaos catching a witness. 1 minute the timeline is quiet. The next minute, Karlissa pops out swinging like she's narrating a crime documentary nobody asked for. And Chrisean is the headline, Compton, altercation, voices raised, streets buzzing. And then the detail that made everyone freeze mid-scroll. Jr. was there. Suddenly, this wasn't internet beef anymore. This wasn't shade, subs, or messy captions. This was grown folks' business colliding with real-life consequences, and Karlissa didn't whisper it. She dragged it into the daylight with receipts, energy, and zero chill. The tone wasn't concerned. It wasn't careful. It was surgical. She spoke like someone who'd been waiting for the right moment to unload, and when she did, it felt less like commentary and more like a warning shot wrapped in sarcasm. The internet didn't gasp. It panicked out because when family drama spills into street stories and kids are anywhere near the narrative, the rules change. The jokes stop landing. The memes hesitate. And everyone starts asking the same question at the same time. How did it get this far? And who's about to pay for it? This didn't feel like gossip. It felt like something slipped out that wasn't supposed to. And once it did, there was no putting it back. The first thing people noticed wasn't what Karlissa said. It was how ready she sounded to say it. No warm-up. No hesitation. No, I don't want to speak on this. She came out swinging like someone who'd been holding receipts in a locked drawer just waiting for the right moment to kick it open. And the moment she mentioned Compton, the tone shifted immediately. Because Compton isn't a metaphor. It's not a vibe. It's not a cute backdrop for Instagram captions. When that name enters a story, everything gets heavier. Karlissa didn't dress it up. She didn't soften the edges. She framed the situation like this wasn't just another Chrisean headline. This was a pattern finally colliding with reality. An altercation. Tension in the streets. Voices raised. Energy wrong. And then she dropped a detail that sucked all the air out of the room. Jr. was there. That's when people stopped laughing. Because the internet loves mess until kids show up in the storyline. Then suddenly everyone becomes serious, concerned, outraged, responsible, at least performatively. Karlissa leaned into that discomfort. She didn't apologize for saying it. She emphasized it. Her message was clear without being delicate. Whatever chaos Chrisean chooses to move in, it doesn't stay contained. It spills, it travels, and sometimes it lands too close to people who shouldn't be anywhere near it. The sarcasm came. Heavy. Karlissa talked like someone tired of watching the same cycle get excused with buzzwords, healing, growth, faith, trauma, all the greatest hits. She questioned how many times she's working on herself could be used as a hall pass before accountability. Shows up. And she wasn't just dragging Chrisean for the altercation. She was dragging the environment, the constant chaos, the reckless movements, the way drama keeps finding her no matter the city, the season, or the so-called new chapter. Karlissa made it sound less like coincidence and more like consequence. That's what made it sting. Because Karlissa didn't talk like a troll chasing clout. She talked like someone who's been watching this up close, shaking her head. wondering how long the spiral would keep going before it turned serious. And Compton made it serious. She hinted at how situations escalate when egos collide in real spaces, not comment sections. How street energy doesn't care about followers or fan sympathy. How altercations don't stay theoretical once they leave the internet. Then she dragged the excuses. Hard. She mocked the way people rush to defend Chrisean no matter what happens. How accountability gets drowned out by emotional backstories. How every incident becomes misunderstood instead of addressed. Karlissa didn't deny Chrisean's struggles. She challenged the idea that struggle equals immunity, and that's when the reactions started rolling in. Clips flew across timelines. People replayed her words over and over, trying to decide if she crossed a line or finally said what others were scared to. Some accused her of exploiting the moment. Others said she was the only one brave enough to speak plainly, but nobody ignored it. Because once Junior was mentioned, the conversation changed lanes. This stopped being celebrity beef and turned into a debate about responsibility, about whether chaos becomes neglect when kids are close enough to witness it. Karlissa leaned into that angle unapologetically. She framed it as protection, not pettiness, as concern disguised as confrontation. And the more people tried to dismiss her tone, the more her point stuck. You could hear the frustration underneath the sarcasm, the kind that comes from watching someone repeat the same mistakes, while the internet claps every time they survive. Another close call, the kind that asks, how many warnings does someone need before the story stops being entertaining? She questioned the optics. Why every altercation gets reframed as resilience? Why danger keeps getting normalized as just her life? Why people act shocked every time something almost goes too far? Karlissa didn't claim to be perfect. She didn't present herself as above it all. She positioned herself as someone done pretending this is normal. And that's what rattled people. Because it's easier to defend chaos than to admit it's getting out of control. It's easier to cheer survival than to demand change. Karlissa forced that tension into the open. By the end of her rant, one thing was clear. This wasn't about one altercation. This was about a trajectory. Compton wasn't the start. It was the checkpoint, and Junior being there wasn't a footnote. It was the line in the sand. The internet could argue tone all day, but the message landed whether people liked it or not. Because once kids become part of the narrative, the mess stops being entertaining. It becomes urgent, and Karlissa made sure everyone felt that urgency loud, uncomfortable, and impossible to scroll past. And just when people thought that was the peak, the story kept unfolding. The moment Karlissa's words finished echoing through the timeline, the internet did what it always does when mess meets reality. It spiraled, not slowly, not thoughtfully. It went full hurricane mode, sucking in opinions, half-truths, old clips, and brand new outrage like debris. Because this wasn't just shade anymore. This was a family voice putting street energy on blast and mentioning a child in the process. That's when the rules changed. Means hesitated before posting. Jokes landed softer. Even the most reckless commentators took a breath before typing. Because when Junior's name entered the conversation, the mess stopped feeling entertaining and started feeling dangerous. But hesitation didn't last long. Reaction videos flooded in like clockwork. Everyone suddenly had a take. Some praised Karlissa for saying what everyone else was scared to. Others accused her of doing too much, saying she should have kept it private. The irony, those same critics replayed the clip 10 times for content, concerned with a monetization plan. People started dissecting Karlissa's tone. Not the message, the tone. Because when people don't like what's being said, they critique how it's delivered. Too harsh, too loud, too public. As if whispering would have made the situation less real. Then came the Chrisean defenders. They moved fast. Trauma explanations loaded. Fake language dusted off. She's been through a lot. Y'all don't know her life. She's targeted. Same script, different headline. Every altercation reframed as survival. Every warning dismissed as hate. Karlissa's supporters pushed back harder. They said this wasn't hate. It was alarm bells. That there's a difference between understanding someone's past and ignoring their present. That when chaos keeps repeating itself in different cities with different people, it stops being coincidence, and Compton stayed sitting heavy in the middle of the conversation because people from there didn't treat it like gossip. They treated it like context. They talked about how situations escalate fast when disrespect meets pride in real spaces. How altercations don't stay contained when there's history, territory, and reputations involved. Suddenly, the story didn't feel like a celebrity headline. It felt like a warning. Celebrities and influencers chimed in indirectly, like always. Vague posts about protecting kids, quotes about moving smarter. Nobody named names. But everyone knew who the message was for. That kind of subtweeting only fueled the fire. People started pulling old clips of Chrisean in confrontations, lining them up like a highlight reel nobody should be proud of. Not to shame her, to prove a pattern. Every city, every moment, same energy, same outcome. Then the conversation split again. Some argued Karlissa crossed a line by bringing Junior into it publicly. Others said ignoring the presence of a child is how situations get worse. That silence is how danger hides in plain sight. There was no neutral ground anymore. And through all of this, Chrisean stayed mostly quiet. That silence didn't calm anything down. It made people uneasy. Because when someone accused of moving recklessly doesn't respond to concerns involving a child, the absence of reassurance becomes its own statement. People weren't asking for drama anymore. They were asking for answers. The memes came back darker this time, less playful, more biting. Comparisons to reality shows where chaos is celebrated until something irreversible happens. People joked that this saga had more red flags than a parade, but nobody was really laughing because the jokes carried fear underneath them. Fear that the next headline wouldn't be commentary. Fear that the next update wouldn't be reversible. Fear that everyone would act shocked even though the warning signs were screaming. Karlissa didn't back down. She doubled down on the message, not the insults. Emphasizing responsibility, emphasizing safety, emphasizing that survival shouldn't be the bar when children are. Anywhere near the fallout, that's when the outrage shifted again. People stopped arguing about her delivery and started debating the bigger issue. Why chaos keeps being normalized? Why danger gets framed as real life? Why people wait until something goes terribly wrong to suddenly care? The internet didn't like those questions because answering them requires self-reflection. It requires admitting that watching mess is easy, but confronting it is uncomfortable. By the end of this phase, the narrative had completely transformed. This wasn't about Karlissa dragging Chrisean. It wasn't about a single altercation. It wasn't even about Compton. It was about boundaries getting ignored until consequences knock louder. And with Junior's name still echoing in the background, one thing became painfully clear. This story wasn't peaking. It was tightening. Like the calm right before something snaps. The aftermath didn't come with flashing lights or trending alerts. It crept in quietly, like reality always does when the internet finally gets bored and moves on to the next mess. And that's when things got serious. Because once the noise faded, what Karlissa said didn't disappear, it sat. It lingered in the background of every conversation about Chrisean like an unpaid bill nobody wanted to open. The jokes stopped hitting. The defenses didn't sound as confident. And the story stopped being about who was right and started being about what happens next. Chrisean's image didn't collapse. That's not how this works. What changed was the patience people had with her. The automatic grace she used to get began to expire. The benefit of the doubt stopped ruining itself. Fans still supported her, but with conditions. Now that every move she made after that moment was watched differently. Less cheering, more side-eye. Less she's just being her. More this is starting to feel reckless. Because once the word child enters the conversation, the threshold shifts. Survival stops being impressive. Avoiding danger becomes the bare minimum. Karlissa's words forced that shift. Whether people liked her tone or not, she reframed the narrative from entertainment to responsibility. And that reframing is uncomfortable. because it asks people to stop clapping and start questioning. The ripple effects showed up fast. People around Chrisean moved quieter. Fewer public appearances. Less loud energy online. The chaos didn't disappear. It just stopped being broadcast with the same confidence. That's not growth, but it's awareness. And awareness is usually the first sign that consequences are being considered. Karlissa didn't apologize. She didn't retract anything. She didn't soften her stance to make it more digestible. She let the message stand on its own, which told people everything they needed to know. She wasn't chasing approval. She wasn't chasing peace. She was drawing a boundary in public. That move changed how people saw her too. Some labeled her messy. Others called her protective. But one thing was clear. She wasn't playing along with the cycle anymore. She refused to normalize the idea that chaos is just part of someone's brand. And that refusal hit harder than insults ever could. Chrisean's silence on the situation didn't erase it. It amplified it. Not responding didn't look mysterious. It looked strategic. Like someone choosing not to fan flames, but also not addressing the smoke. And silence around safety questions is always loud. The public didn't turn on her. That's important. This wasn't a cancellation. It was something more dangerous. The public image creeps in slowly. It doesn't trend. It doesn't announce itself. It just sits there every time someone goes to defend you and hesitates before hitting post. People started asking quieter questions. Why does danger keep finding her? Why does every city turn into a conflict zone? Why do near misses keep getting framed as victories? Those questions don't need answers right away to be damaging. The fact that they exist at all changes the story. And Junior. That detail never left the room. It didn't get memed away. It didn't get buried under new headlines. It stayed uncomfortable, which is exactly why Karlissa said it out loud. Because once a child becomes part of the environment, every excuse sounds thinner. Trauma doesn't disappear, but it no longer explains everything. Growth isn't measured by survival anymore. It's measured by prevention. The internet hates that metric. Prevention isn't dramatic. Safety doesn't go viral. Responsibility doesn't clip well. But it matters. By the end of this chapter, one thing was undeniable. This wasn't just another blow-up. This was a checkpoint, a moment where the storyline could either keep looping or finally change direction. No one knows which path will get taken. What's clear is that Karlissa cracked open a conversation people were avoiding. Not politely, not gently, but effectively. And once those conversations start, they don't fully shut down again. They wait. They resurface the next time something almost goes too far. The next time a headline feels familiar. The next time people say, "How did this happen again?" This story didn't end with resolution. It ended with tension. The kind that hangs in the air and makes everyone move a little more carefully. The kind that turns entertainment into accountability when nobody was ready for it. Because once someone says the quiet part out loud, especially about kids and chaos, the mess stops being funny. It becomes a warning. And warnings don't disappear. They echo before you scroll. Off like this didn't just punch a hole through the timeline. Let's get real. You watched because it felt explosive. You stayed because it got uncomfortable. And you're still here because you know this wasn't just another celebrity spat. This was a warning wrapped in chaos. So don't play innocent now. Smash that like button like it owes you rent. Hit subscribe like you don't want to miss the next meltdown before it hits the blogs. And drop a comment because this conversation isn't finished, not even close. Was Karlissa out of line? Or out of patience? Did she cross a boundary? Or finally draw one? And does the presence of a child change everything? Or are people pretending it doesn't? Say it loud. Say it messy. This comment section isn't court. It's the jury room. Because here's the truth nobody likes to admit. Scandals don't stop because people learn. They stop because consequences finally show up. And when they don't, the cycle just reloads with a new headline and the same excuses. If you're tired of fake concern, selective outrage, and Cass getting a pass because it's just entertainment, then you already know why this channel exists. We don't babysit narratives, we don't sanitize mess, and we definitely don't ignore red flags just because they're trending. New scandals drop constantly. New clips, new breakdowns, same energy, same warnings. Nobody listens to the first time. So stay locked in, stay critical, stay ready, because the next chapter always comes when everyone swears the story is over. This is Celeb SYNC, where the drama connects, and the truth doesn't get muted.